Hello, people. I have finished a book, The British in India, A Social History of the Raj. I bought this book, and I paid a lot. I paid like $25. That book's $1 million. And I read 200 pages, stopped, read about 6 other books, and then I returned to this, and I don't know, the second time it didn't seem so bad. The author just has an odd style of writing where he picks an individual or a family, explains where they came from, how they got to India, what they did when they were in India, and how things ended up for them. And sometimes he does that in a page and a half, sometimes he does that in 2 pages. And that's kind of how the whole book went. So it's crammed full of facts, crammed full of people, and I did learn things. As much as I bitched about this book when I first started reading it, it ended up being not too bad. The book was published in 2018, 525 pages, so it's a long book. And the author, his name is David Gilmour, and I thought, oh, that fucking name sounds familiar. I must have read something else by him. But no, I haven't. And if you Google it, you'll see why the name David Gilmour sounded familiar to me, because I guess one of the guys in Pink Floyd was David Gilmour. But it's not the same guy. Richard Dawkins' family was in India. I don't think he ever was, but his family went there and, probably made their fortune there. That's what most people did. Not everybody. George Orwell was in Burma, and to me it's hard to think of Burma as part of the East India Company, but it was. And he writes another book called Burmese Days, and I would like to get that. Looking at used bookstores, I'm going to catch hell trying to find it. There's a word, Wallah, Wallah, and you could put Wallah at the end of almost anything. There was a term that they use in this book, throughout the book, called boxwallah, and a boxwallah can either be somebody that owns a factory, or it can be somebody that sets up a box and sells fish or sells mangoes or some shit like that. And there was actually the beer wallah in this book, so I kind of got to where I'm using that word. The English, as they were there, they took mistresses, Indian mistresses, and of course they had servants living in their houses, and oftentimes they would have sex with these women, and it would produce a half European, half Indian child, and the book goes on and on about what happens to these people. They get sent back to England, get educated. Some of them leave and go to America, and one of them was a woman named Vivian Leigh. She is half Indian and half English, and the women, the female children, were renowned for their beauty, and Vivian Leigh certainly is beautiful. It goes into ice a lot. The English, obviously, are bitching about the heat in India, and what they do to try to keep cool, and how they leave, and they go to the hill stations in the summer. None of them want to work in the Central Plains. They would rather work in the north of India, and it kind of goes into ice a little bit there, which I thought was really interesting. I ended up stopping and Googling a lot of stuff. Really, by 1878, you could make your own ice. You didn't have to get ice from Lake Windham in the northeast of the United States. Lake Windham was where they would cut ice and ship it around, and you can just imagine how much that ice would melt as they ship it around. Of course, Kipling was there, and I read that book a few books ago. Kim, uh, I'd like to read. He writes a book called Baba Black Sheep, and that is about him, his experiences when he gets sent back to school in England. The East, the English Indian Company, the East India Company, has a ban on missionary activities. They lift the ban in 1813, and missionaries flood into the country. More of them from the United States than anywhere else, but they come from Scotland, they come from England, they come from France, they come from everywhere. They lift the ban, and this leads to a lot of the problems. Uh, they were pretty wise not to allow missionaries because it just irritates the local people. Many of these missionaries spent their entire lives in India and never converted more than a handful of people. Uh, they do mention James Kirkpatrick. I read a book over the summer called Indian Moguls, and that was a very interesting book, and it centers on Kirkpatrick and his family, and he marries a very high-born Muslim Indian. It mentions Kitchener a few times, and I really want to find a newish biography of Kitchener because there is a lot of evidence that Kitchener may have in fact been gay. He may have repressed it his whole life, but maybe they've found out some things, I don't know. The British returning home and the British pining for England, pining for a cooler climate. It reminds me a lot of myself here in Florida, and I got hill stations written down again there. The hill stations were the relief for everybody. You went up on the hill stations, you'd be lucky to get assigned to a hill station where you stayed there all the time. The Raj ended in 1947. The English left. They didn't all leave. The Indian people that took over the business of running the company asked a lot of them to stay while they sorted everything out. And there was also a thing called the partition in 1947, and that created Pakistan, and a couple of years later it created Bangladesh. And for a little while you had this oddball situation of British officers being in charge of the Pakistan Army and being in charge of the Indian Army, and there were several instances where they had to disobey orders because they didn't want to fight against their own men. I'm going to stick this one in the box that's going back to the cabin. I am reading another book. I'm reading it kind of slowly because it really hasn't got a hold of me yet. It's an autobiography, and it's already hot here in Florida, so I can't wait to get back. Thanks for watching.